Once the essence of American pickers, Danielle Colby now stands on the defendant's bench in a murder case that has profoundly affected America. Decline into criminality represents a scandal never seen before in the history of. There is a complex plot on reality TV to blame Mike Wolfe for the Frank Fritz's death, which transformed this cherished figure into a heartless conspirator. Why did Frank Fritz, whom she had known for more than 10 years, die? Identifying the victim and the reason Mike Wolfe turned around and made the accusation. Let's examine this footage to see whether Danielle is the actual murderer. The complete facts and to bid a somber farewell to a silent great, Frank Danielle Colby, Fritz in court, from witness to murder. KBY, the initial suspect, reluctantly testified in court for the nonetheless, she made an effort to maintain her objectivity and avoid the acrimonious dispute between the two. American reality TV bromance was formerly defined by men, but as the research expanded and startling new information arose, and her name appeared among them under investigation, which prompted the FBI to step in December 2024 the Davenport, Iowa, courtroom was crowded during Mike Wolfe's murder trial. The American Pickers star was accused of murdering his longtime Frank Fritz, co-host, passed away on October 1. Initially diagnosed as a stroke, 2024 was subsequently suspected of poisoning the country. Was taken aback, and particularly so, when Danielle Colby, a close associate of both men, was called as a major witness, and her evidence, together with the adamant arguments made by both sides, turned the trial into a media frenzy that exposed the most sinister aspects of their three-way relationship. Started when Mike Wolfe's house was raided by the FBI in October 2024 and found Frank's journal, which suggested Mike's murderous intent. In addition to a neurotoxic vial concealed in a secure, lead prosecutor Sarah Harova, an accomplished criminal defense lawyer with more than 20 years of expertise, contended that Mike poisoned Frank to stop an impending financial action and defend the American Pickers brand. Mike Wolfe is a guy, not simply a TV personality, according to Harova, who will stop at nothing to maintain power, and will demonstrate that he intentionally poisoned in order to conceal the reality behind his own, Frank Fritz once referred to his brother. Thus, even though a stroke was first thought to be the cause of death, evidence such text messages between Mike and Danielle were encrypted by neurotoxins discovered in Frank's blood. A $175,000 transfer in Colby sparked concerns about Danielle, a long-standing friend of both men, was a key player in the premeditated murder. Witness, but during her testimony, a surprising incident turned the case on its head, putting her at the core of the inquiry that Harova offered. Discovered text messages that Danielle authored hours ago from a backup server. Frank was discovered unconscious, and he is currently alone with no one. Mike responded, "I'm scheduled to check on him until tomorrow, windows shut." Harova declared that this thread should be deleted, saying, "These messages suggest a deliberate strategy to get rid of Frank Fritz." Mike Wolfe, assisted by in order to protect the American Pickers empire, Danielle Colby poisoned his companion. She went on to claim that Mike had transferred $175,000 to Danielle from one of his shell businesses, calling it the defense team for hush money. Mike, headed by well-known Chicago attorney Jonathan Kessler, strongly objected, claiming that the messages were misinterpreted and failed to provide evidence that the transfer was a lawful company. Mike Wolfe is the subject of a transaction involving American Picker offshore accounts. Kessler said in a smear campaign intended to ruin his name, "Danielle Colby, we will establish Mike's innocence, and she is being coerced into testifying against someone she has known for years." When the prosecution disclosed that a vial of Militerra, the room fell silent. Mike Wolfe's garage contained neurotoxic, a substance prohibited for civilian use. But Kessler retaliated with coolness and dignity. "My client is an expert antique collector that, in the opinion of our specialists, is a piece from. There is no proof that the medical kit from that era was opened, and there is no sign of Frank. Since there is no evidence of recent tampering, Fritz's DNA cannot be connected to the death. Prejudiced at worst, speculative at best, he even sent in pictures and tax documents from 2016, in which Mike displays his. Mike is a history geek who collected ancient medications in a deleted episode. Not a poisoner. Danielle Colby went back to the stand when the jurors hesitated on day 4, under Prosecutor Horov's guidance. Her voice trembled and her eyes were full of fear. She explained how Mike's behavior changed following Frank's departure from the show, and according to her, Mike developed an obsession with being the only spokesperson for American Pickers in 2021. When I proposed making amends with Frank, he became enraged and started crying. I doubted he meant it when he stated, "If Frank doesn't back off, I'll make sure he shuts up for good." I became terrified after Frank passed away because she acknowledged seeing Mike come a peculiar bottle into the Office of Ancient Archaeology, although she stated she was unaware that it was poison when Kessler questioned her credibility during cross-examination by pointing to the more than 200 communications she exchanged with Mike during the week after Frank's passing. Several people mentioned his medicine and Miss Colby. "Why didn't you notify the police about the vial if you were dubious?" So he inquired and indicated that she will soon complete a $175,000 deal and buy real estate in Puerto Rico. Danielle then implied that she had been compensated to remain silent, to which she replied, I owe Frank, therefore I'm only relaying what I witnessed. I had no idea about any plans. The reality that money was only used for business. Horov then inquired about Danielle's handling of Frank's medication. After hesitating for a while, Danielle answered, "I just checked till I knew exactly what he was taking, but sometimes he forgets to take it." Was taking and how much? The crowd erupted in gasps, indicating that she had thorough understanding of the precise dosage in accordance with how the poison had been. "Miss Colby, how could you know the dosage?" Horov pressed. "You provided Mike this information, but you didn't plan to meddle with it." "I just wanted to help Frank," Danielle stumbled. "You." Her role was the subject of a separate FBI investigation after this unintentional disclosure. As a potential mastermind, and Mike Wolf's involvement continued after Danielle resigned. Took the stand, refuting all accusations and focusing attention on "I didn't kill Frank, Danielle was the one," and his voice was filled with rage. She claimed that Frank was dead because she was concerned with controlling American Pickers. "She pushed me to believe that the program would be better without him. Should remove them so that nobody could see how she was following Frank." Mike. Danielle claimed the vial after bringing it into the office. She demanded $175,000 to keep quiet about dubious business practices behind his shocking testimony raised questions in the courtroom, and among the judge Linda revealed Danielle's genuine intentions to the world less than 10 minutes later. After Mangrove made the shocking disclosure, this court decided to further suspend Danielle Colby, an argument witness, is currently officially being investigated as a second suspect in this homicide case after Danielle's historic trial directly into the FBI's websites, leading to a raid on her home for additional proof. The FBI's inquiry just after the Mike Wolf spectacular trial in November 2024, where he was charged with murder. The FBI's suspicions were transferred from Frank Fritz to Danielle Colby, the both men's long-standing co-workers on American Pickers. Danielle's unintentional testimony in court when she disclosed detailed information about Mike's assertion that she was the real offender, together with the medication, pushed investigators, led by Special Agent in Charge Emily Rivera, will search her Davenport, Iowa, residence. Specialist in homicide and financial crime, the FBI secured a search warrant for Danielle's property was searched 48 hours after the trial ended. Conducted around dawn, when a group of local police and FBI officials surrounded Danielle's home, concentrating their efforts on her own office, where she maintained American Pickers business. Records pertaining to her vintage clothes business and burlesque troupe are concealed in a safe beneath a bookcase. Agents found surveillance footage on an encrypted hard drive. From security footage taken close to Frank's home on October 1, the night of his death. Analysis in 2024 verified that Danielle had taken the video out of the security prior to being turned over to the police, an action that investigators viewed as an intentional effort to hide evidence. Agent Rivera said, "This is not the actions of an uninvolved observer." After the video was decoded and improved, presented a street-facing camera as incriminating evidence of Danielle's involvement. Caught Danielle on October 1, around 10:30 p.m., driving to Frank's house. She entered through the back mere hours before he was discovered comatose. Door with a tiny suitcase and departing after 15 minutes with image-enhancing software verified that the glass vial in the bag was the same as the one that contained the nerve. More incriminating video was eventually discovered by the agent at Mike's home. At 2 a.m., Danielle returned to the security firm and demanded a copy of the video for security inspections right before the police transmission, which clarified why the first video had inexplicably disappeared while the key piece of evidence from the first investigation was found in Danielle's bedroom contains a tiny wooden box with a glass vial that is exactly like the one according to forensic analysis. Mike's nerve agent matches the kind used in Frank's prescription. The bottle included Danielle's fingerprints and more traces of the same poison. There was a handwritten note describing the dosage inside the box, which was damning. With Danielle's instructions for incorporating the poison into Frank's tablet's handwriting, which was in direct opposition to her assertion in court that she had only reviewed Frank's medication to assist him, and prosecutor Sarah Harrove, who oversaw the case against Mike right away started looking into Danielle separately. Claiming that FBI investigators have discovered Colby is not merely an accomplice but rather the mastermind. Proof that Danielle fabricated the vial's discovery at Mike's home in order to discredit him with an old archaeology under confidentiality. The employee informed the FBI that Danielle had time requested that in late September 2024, he bring a gift to Mike's house. Just the employee verified the present was a little package a few days prior to Frank's passing. Additionally, encrypted messages that matched the vial's description were discovered. That following Frank's passing, Danielle texted Mike in a mysterious way, and the vial is there. In a subsequent remark, Mike asserted, "I had no idea what that vial was. Danielle gave it to me and instructed me to store it in the safe that she provided." Initially written off as a last-ditch effort to shift responsibility. The FBI is currently re-examining Mike's test. Because he has repeatedly denied any role in Frank's passing, claiming Danielle had deceived him. After the show during a follow-up questioning, Mike remarked, Danielle always claimed that Frank was an issue that he reduced output because she was aware of his medications and had a key to his home. Mike also claimed the offshore accounts where I was a pawn in her game. Danielle requested a payment of $175,000 to address financial concerns, however he didn't know the financial proof had anything to do with Frank's passing. Only strengthens the FBI's suspicions that Danielle controlled offshore accounts that dubious American pickers sent $3.2 million to withdrawals of $450,000 just days prior to a forensic investigation after Frank's passing showed Danielle moved some of those money into a private account in Puerto Rico, where she bought an opulent property right after the event. Danielle Colby clashed with prosecutor Harrove. Didn't only frame Mike Wolfe, instead, she planned a strategic scheme to remove Frank Fritz, take over the show's finances, and blame everything on she concealed a crime committed by someone else beneath feminist branding. In addition to bolstering the case against Danielle, the evidence discovered in her house provided a potential re-examination of Mike Wolfe's case, despite the fact that he is still charged. The case has now taken a dramatic turn in relation to financial malfeasance, with Danielle Colby as the main suspect at the center. And her trial is anticipated to be nothing less than explosive. The plot to cut off Frank Fritz and the connection between Mike Wolfe and Fritz. Danielle Colby used to be at the center of American Pickers. The trio with Frank and Mike on a popular channel reality show about antique hunting. Danielle overseeing antiques and the primary pickers traveling around America. Archaeology with a keen sense of humor and style offered a close-knit, pleasant familial picture, but a more sinister narrative started to emerge behind the scenes. When Frank began to be gradually removed from the show in the early over the years, Frank Fritz and Mike Wolfe formed the ideal team with Danielle. Were like brothers who established American Pickers from the ground up because they shared a love of antiques. In 2010, Danielle, who coordinated from The Office, brought intelligence and bravery that made the show unique, but beginning in 2018, as Frank started to health problems such as Crohn's disease and persistent back pain that he began, according to a former production assistant who wished to remain anonymous, Danielle started slowing down on the road. Speaking privately with Mike Plant about Frank being a burden, the notion that Mike serving as the only face would make the show go more smoothly. Frank's seclusion occurred gradually but purposefully, thanks to Danielle's influence. Had become much more persuaded by the production crew to cut down on Frank's screen time, citing his health as a drawback for lengthy journeys. Thus she also urged Mike to maintain his conversations with Frank that were solely professional, and said it would be beneficial preserve the show's reputation by sending an encrypted message that was later discovered by Danielle. Forwarded the FBI's message to Mike in 2020 read, "I'll let you shine on your own, Frank. You should remain in Iowa, manage the remainder." Despite his reluctance, Mike ultimately caved down after feeling pressured by an order to maintain American Pickers' success. Danielle and the producers subsequently stated in court, "Danielle forced me to leave Frank behind even though I didn't want to, think it's the only way to keep the program going." By 2021, Danielle's plot to get rid of Frank, she set up covert meetings with producers and Mike, highlighting the fact that Frank no longer matched the show's changing trajectory, which emphasized more dynamic material and speedier travel. Per Frank's after his death on October 1, 2024, the FBI found his personal journal. Stated, "DNM whisper every time I walk in, I feel like an outsider on my own show." In July, Frank was formally kicked out of American Pickers. 2021, with public health concerns mentioned as the cause, although he thought in a 2025, Danielle had tricked Mike into letting him go. "Losing Frank was the most agonizing experience of my life," an interrogation broke down. "I allowed Danielle Colby to take over because I believed she was correct, but I was mistaken." When Danielle started putting pressure on Mike to give up control of the American Picker brand, his suffering increased. Regarding intellectual property, Danielle took over as the financial manager in 2022. Antique Archaeology's operations oversee offshore accounts that obtained $3.2 million through dubious Pickers-related transactions. She threatened to reveal these transactions, purportedly causing harm to Mike's reputation unless one encrypted message from him was signed over. The rights to FBI recovered 2023 read, "Sign the You have no choice but to sign a contract or the world learns about the money." Days before Danielle got the transfer document, in August 2023, cornered Mike signed it. An FBI suspected $175,000 payment from one of Mike's offshore corporations was a hush pay, but Danielle's deceit didn't end there. Controlled the show's content and staged antiques to consolidate authority findings and making sure she was shown on screen more often. While Danielle relaunched herself as a solo artist after grieving over Frank and struggling with betrayal. The celebrity is promoting her vintage clothing store by utilizing the name of the American Picker. The FBI was informed by a former crew member that during a furious dispute in 2023, Danielle forewarned Mike, saying, "Frank is done, and if you don't listen to Mike was too scared to confront the issue, so he lived in fear." Another courtroom, another trial, her exposing the criminal mastermind, but this time, Mike Wolfe was not the center of